What is going on, everyone? My name's Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today it's something we've been talking about for weeks and weeks and weeks. Double game weeks. They're finally confirmed. We now know exactly which teams are going to have double game weeks in what game week, and obviously we already know about the blanks and stuff because of the FA Cup. So we've basically got all the knowledge we need now in terms of scheduling until the end of the season. Obviously there's still stuff that can crop up, red cards, suspensions, injuries and stuff like that, but when it comes to scheduling and fixture planning, we've got it all. So in this video I'm going to take a quick look at what's been announced, what teams are playing when, and just some other things to consider, and then maybe in other Q&A videos we'll go into a bit more depth of exactly which players to pick and stuff like that. So let's just kick on with it. So first up, we've got game week 32. We knew this would probably have double game weeks in, and we already had some of them announced, but now we know the full schedule. We did think at one point that maybe Southampton will get in, but they haven't got into game week 32. So this is going to be the biggest double game week of the lot. Plenty of teams to choose from. So Fulham, we've got Manchester City away and Watford away. Brighton, Southampton at home and Chelsea away. Cardiff, Chelsea at home, Man City at home. Probably not looking at too many Cardiff players for that game. For those two games, pretty tough. Palace have got Huddersfield at home and Spurs away. Man City is Fulham away and Cardiff at home, which looks like a really good set of fixtures for Man City, and obviously we know the quality that their players have got. Watford have got Manchester United away and Fulham at home. Man United have got Watford at home, Wolves away, and then Spurs have got Liverpool away, Crystal Palace at home, Wolves, Burnley away, Man United at home, and then Chelsea with another good double game week, Cardiff away and Brighton at home. But obviously we're not as sure about their players in terms of scoring points as we are about Man City, who I said have already got a pretty good double game week. So that's all the fixtures to come. In terms of players, I mean, I'm not going to go through every single player from every single squad in this video. That's not really what it's about. But looking at it, I think Fulham, for me, I would probably write off. Man City away and Watford away is not great, and their players not great either. Brighton's is okay. Southampton at home and Chelsea away. The thing about Brighton is they got a couple of double game weeks. So for those of you without wildcards and free hits and stuff, it might be worth getting some of their players kind of maybe Ryan as the backup keeper there, or a cheap defender like Duffy that you can bench another game week. So they might be worth a look at. Southampton home and Chelsea away is not the worst. Especially if you're going to have those players in your squad anyway. Like I said, Cardiff, pretty tough. Chelsea at home, Man City at home. They will have another double game week as well, which we'll come on to in a minute. But that is pretty poor fixtures, and I'm not too sure, outside of maybe someone like Camarasa, who you're going to be looking at Cardiff. So for free hit, definitely not Cardiff, unless you get one of their really cheap players just to kind of bulk up your team and let you spend money elsewhere. Crystal Palace is decent enough. Huddersfield at home. Spurs away could be tough, and that is going to be in Spurs' new stadium. So I think people are looking at that two ways. One, they're in a new stadium, so they expect them to do well because they're really going to want to do well and impress the fans. Other people are saying it might take them a bit of time to bed in there. So Crystal Palace got some good budget options. Schlup's playing in midfield, but he's listed as a defender. A lot of us already own Wan-Bissaka. You've got the goalkeepers, only 4.2 million. Batshuayi and Zaha up front are pretty good budget options. And Milivojevic, the penalty king, even he's doing pretty well for his price this year, even though it went up versus last year. So they got a good few players to look at. Man City, I think a triple up looks almost a must. And I think Aguero and Sterling will be top of people's list, plus one other. Either Laporte, if you want to go for a defender, or maybe an extra midfielder, Bernardo or David Silva potentially. We can look at Mahrez and Sané. Obviously, we're going to have concerns over who's going to get what minutes. And we saw in the first double game week for Man City that Sané definitely got limited by minutes, but the likes of Sterling and Aguero could do well. So I will definitely be tripling up on Man City. It just depends exactly which players to get. Watford's is okay, but then on Wolves, the thing with that is they got FA Cup fixtures to worry about, so we could see some rotation. Although, interestingly, if you think that Man City are going to win the FA Cup, because they've already got the League Cup, if they win that and the FA Cup, then 7th place in the league will get a European spot next year. So, as a general rule, I would say that the likes of Wolves and Watford not really got too much more to play for this year, because they're unlikely to jump into the top 6. I don't think the likes of Arsenal, Man United and Chelsea will drop enough points. But there is a chance that 7th place, and you would think, obviously those two teams are hoping Man City don't win the Cup because obviously they're still in the FA Cup. But if Man City do, which most people would put money on them doing, there is a spot for 7th place to get into Europe. So they might have one eye on that. So the rotation might not be as bad as we think. And then Fulham at home is a good fixture. Man United away tough, but Watford have been kind of a little bit hit and miss this year. So I think there's every chance they could do something against Man United. And Fulham at home is definitely a good fixture. So again, budget options like DFA, maybe Deeney up front if you think he's going to play, Holebas in defence too, and Foster is someone I would definitely look at. I think for save points in the United game, and maybe a clean sheet in the Fulham one. The Man United, definitely look at them again. Just talking about Watford and Wolves, if they are going to rest players, then Man United, no real need to now outside of their European fixture against Barcelona. So given they're still fighting for top 4, you'd expect their players to mostly play. So Lindelof in defence at 5.1. Lukaku up front, if he's going to still be starting, then he could be a good option. If he doesn't, for example, if Lingard, Martial and Rashford are all fully fit, we might see Solskjaer go back to that front three, in which case Lukaku would drop out, and then suddenly it makes Rashford a much better option, and potentially the 2 guys in midfield as well. So I think Man United are worth looking at. A lot of people looking at doubling or tripling on them. Spurs, I haven't written it off yet, but I've got concerns over whether they're going to suddenly smash it in their new stadium. And Crystal Palace are not exactly bad defensively either on their day. And the Liverpool away game almost feels like a write-off to me, because you just don't know how it's going to pan out. And it could be a really tight game given how good Liverpool are defensively. So Kane's 12.5 million. I'm definitely going to captain a Man City player. So I'm not going to captain Kane. Do I really want him on my team at 12.5 million? Son's done really well this year, but it's kind of dropped off a little bit recently. He's only 8.6, which is good. And then you've got the likes of Ali and Eriksen, which could be options. Maybe defensively, if you think that Liverpool game is going to be tight, they could get a clean sheet there and against Palace. So you can look at their centre-backs, but the full-backs tend to rotate quite a lot. So I'm a little bit wary of Spurs, if I'm honest, even though I've got great memories of Harry Kane and double game weeks. I am a bit put off them right now, if I'm honest. Wolves obviously been doing great this year, knocked Man United out of the cup. They're on an absolute high 7th position right now. We know how good Jimenez is. We know what Doherty can do. Only concern there is, like I've already spoken about, they have rested players for cup games in the past, and that could happen again. If they don't, 2 okay fixtures, but even with Man United, we've just seen what they can do in the cup. No reason they couldn't repeat that again. And then Chelsea, they've definitely got the second best double game week behind Man City. So I really want to invest in the likes of Hazard, maybe even double defence. It's just the way they're playing right now. You just can't predict what kind of team is going to turn up. They lost 2-0 to Everton, which is poor. Hazard could have scored, to be fair. But again, he's quite expensive. Like Kane, 11 million of your budget. And we've wanted to fit in a couple of Man United players at triple Man City. It gets tough on the budget to fit them all in if you're on a free hit. So have to do a little bit more digging in Chelsea, but I'm definitely keen on one of their defenders and Hazard. So lots to choose from. Game week 32 looking big. So game week 34 looking a little bit smaller. Just Brighton and Cardiff with double game week fixtures. Cardiff with Burnley away and Brighton away. So not great 2 away fixtures, like I said earlier. Maybe someone like Camarasa could be decent enough in as a cheap option. If you're on wildcard in 32, or if you're just bringing in players because you've not got any chips. And then Brighton got Bournemouth at home and Cardiff at home. Now, I quite like that as double game week fixtures go. I think Bournemouth, I always say this is a team that I always expect to concede. And Cardiff, I think Brighton could definitely get something there. So I always want to captain a double game week player, even if it's Brighton or Cardiff. So I will be looking at their players quite heavily. Yes, you've got the other big hitters from teams with single game weeks that could do well. But I just like the kind of dream of getting a big score from a double game week player. So the likes of Murray, maybe if Gross is back from Brighton, even Duffy or Ryan if you want to go for a defender or a goalkeeper, potentially. Not quite sure about that. From my point of view, I'll probably look to go for an attacker, but there's definitely options there. So game week 34, we'll have Brighton and Cardiff. And if you're using chips in 32 and 35 and you've got the triple captain left, potentially you could use it here. But we'll discuss that a bit more in another video probably. So double game week 35, still quite big, although not as big as game week 32, but some decent investment opportunities again for sure. So Southampton come into the mix. Obviously they don't have another double game week, but this one, Newcastle away and Watford away, is decent enough. And they have got some pretty good budget enablers as well, whether you want to beef out the rest of your team and start them in your 11, or if like me, you're maybe looking to bench boost. So Valerie for Southampton is only 4 million in defence. I think he scored 2 in the last 2 now. Don't expect that to continue necessarily, but still a really good budget way to get into their defence. And then you got like Ward-Prowse at 5.1. Brighton, obviously, you might have players left over from 34. And again, if there's someone you can bench, then great. You might even want to play him this week, but it is pretty tough. Wolves away and Spurs away, so I'm not sure I would load up too many Brighton players for game week 34. Because going into 35, I probably wouldn't want to play him too much. But again, on the bench boost, the likes of Duffy or Ryan as kind of backup choices might be decent enough. Man City, so this double game week definitely not as good as the one in 32. The thing is, it's Man City, so you're probably going to want their players anyway because they've got decent enough fixtures outside of it, obviously going for the league, and they could do well in these games. Obviously, it's not the one, probably not the double game that you want to captain someone in, but you're still going to want some of their players. Maybe not a triple up for this one, but Spurs at home, Man United away, pretty tough. But, you know, never write off Man City, just the way they can play against anyone. Arsenal come into the mix here. So I haven't talked about them yet, but they've got a really good fixture. Palace at home, Wolves away. Again, two teams that on their day can defend, but I just think Arsenal are probably going to be worth considering on the wild card in 34, or even if you're just bringing someone in 35. Like so, Lacazette's looked good recently. Aubameyang's obviously key. Kolasinac in defence maybe. We'll have to see kind of who's in and out of the team by game week 35, but definitely looking at Arsenal. Obviously, Man United, the reverse fixture for Man City, so they've got City at home and Everton away. So again, it's okay if you're carrying them from earlier in the season, but you probably wouldn't want a triple up on them for that double game week necessarily. But yeah, pretty good fixture overall. Wolves again is pretty good, I think. I like this one more than their game week 32. Brighton at home and Arsenal at home. So we'll have to see kind of which players are getting rested and stuff like that. But again, I can't write off Jimenez. He's been so good to me all year and for a lot of you. So I do like the Wolves options again. Spurs looking a little bit better. Man City away and Brighton at home. So obviously you're focusing on that Brighton fixture. And at this stage, at game week 35, you're obviously, especially if you're wildcarding, you're not just looking at 35, you're looking at the rest of the season as well. So that's something to take into account. But decent enough. And then Watford, Huddersfield away and Southampton at home, which is nice. So again, it just depends where the fixtures fall and whether their players are going to get rotated. So I think this double game week is probably not as strong for like a triple captain. I think that definitely looks better in game week 32 or even 34, dare I say it, for Brighton just because of the fixtures. But I think the likes of Arsenal here with Crystal Palace at home, Wolves away might be worth a look in. So bench boost is probably going to be a little bit tough, but because of the teams involved, they do have quite a few budget options from like Southampton, Brighton, Wolves and Watford, especially if you've got on the likes of Doherty and Jimenez early. So for bench boost, it could look quite good. So game week 35 looking okay, not quite as good as 32, but decent enough. So just a few other things to consider. Obviously, this is going to depend what kind of chips and stuff you got left, but when to use the triple captain. So obviously, if you were thinking about using kind of free hit and wildcard to kind of go all in on game week 32 and 35, and you were wondering when to use your triple captain, obviously some people used it on Salah in game week 31. If you don't want to use it in a single game week, then you have now got the option of using it in game week 34 for Brighton. I know that's not the most ideal team to use it on, and it kind of throws me back to when I used mine on Andy Carroll, which was a huge mistake. But they are two pretty good fixtures. So if you really want to use it in a double and you're not going to be able to do it in 32 or 35, then 34 could be the way to go. Additionally, depending on how your team set up and all your chips, triple captain in game week 32 looks really good just because of how good Man City's fixtures are. So Aguero or Sterling triple captain should come out pretty well. So definitely look into when you're going to use your triple captain if you've not already. A new strategy that's been touted about, I think I saw David Mundy from Fantasy Football Scout talking about this, and there might have been a few others on Twitter, basically saying if you've not already hit the free hit just yet, and again, this kind of ties in with when to use your triple captain. You could wildcard this week, then free hit next week. So you'd set up your wildcard worrying about mostly the double game weeks and the rest of the season, instead of going for instead of using it in game week 34, and then you'd free hit in 33. So obviously you wouldn't concentrate on those blank players in your wildcard, and then you get the option to choose your triple captain in 34 and then bench boost in 35. I mean, you could still do it the other way around, but obviously most people are on a free hit in 32. They're using their wildcard in 34. So you could use your wildcard in game week 33, but then you're trying to balance double game weeks against blank players, and I don't think it would be the optimum way to go. So have a think about that strategy if you're worried about when to use your triple captain. Obviously, if you haven't got all these chips, then it's completely different. FA Cup in Europe, so definitely check the fixture schedules of which teams are playing in Europe and the FA Cup, because that could spell rotation around the double game weeks. Probably go into this more in another video, but it's just something to consider for now. And if you've got no chips left, what to do? I mean, that is such a difficult question to answer without knowing each of your individual teams. But it's just got to be a balancing act. You've got to look at teams that are maybe having more than one double game week, or have a double game week and don't blank, i.e. Chelsea. Look really good to go on right now. But I just think you have to accept that you can't have the perfect team in every game week when you haven't got chips. Definitely think hits are viable around double game weeks. There's big points to be had. And obviously blanks maybe not so much, because we saw how bad the game week 31 one was. So I probably wouldn't take too many hits. If you're going to use hits, basically, I'd probably use them in and around double game weeks and to set up for the rest of the season, rather than worrying about game week 33. So just some things to consider. We'll hopefully go into more detail on it throughout the rest of the international break on different videos. So that's it for this video. We finally have all the information we need now till the end of the season. So hopefully you enjoyed that one. Obviously in future videos and streams now we can properly talk about what players we're getting in and stuff like that. Obviously, on the last stream, we were talking about players like Southampton for the free hit in 32, but now we know that's not really viable because they don't have a double game week. So now we've got all the info, it's much easier to talk about these things, and hopefully I'll have a few more videos or streams out over the international break and try and answer more of your questions. If you did enjoy this video, give it a thumbs up. Got to have a like for double game weeks, be much appreciated as always. Subscribe if you're new around here, and leave a comment below if you've got any other questions or general comments on this video. Otherwise, I'll leave it there. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers all.